Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting. We missed you all last month. So we have a lot of items on our agenda today, and we're going to try to get through all of them. As you know, we have the Chairman Clark is not here today. He's away on company business, and so I'm chairing the meeting today. We have 5 general agenda items, and we have 18 consent agenda items. Council, are there any consent items that you would like pulled?
C4.
Okay.
C12.
Okay.
C1, 2, 3, and 14.
C1.
1, 2, 3, and 14.
Okay. Are any left? All right. Could I,
If not, you want to
yes, I need a motion, please.
all votes remaining out.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that all of the remaining items are moved to adopt. Let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Are we using electronic? Okay, we're using electronic, guys. Yeah, who did that?
What did he do?
He did first.
We knew he was out on
He was out on.
it. Heard me say,
I'm bad that way. Sorry.
But you, sure about this, Melvin? Do we need to redo?
Here we go.
Okay. You vote? Yeah. Okay, it passes. Now we will go to consent item number 1. Madam Secretary, please.
Item C1, resolution authorizing the sale of a certain city-owned vacant lot on Gray Tuck Drive under the upset bid procedure NCGS 168-269, located in the southeast ward.
Yeah, just saw that. The reason I pulled this was because this was, as you may recall, was on a piece of property that was in a fairly heavily contested zoning dispute several months ago regarding a gravel pit and what have you. I'm trying to figure out if the city owns it, why we're selling it at this point. Could somebody tell me why this is going on the market? Because I know the neighbors. I'm sorry, Councilmember Taylor's not here because it's really his ward.
Yeah.
And I didn't know whether he was fully informed on this, and I just wanted to draw a little attention to it before we got in front of council Monday.
Go ahead.
Yes, Councilman Larson. This is coming back again, and Councilmember Taylor is aware of it and has endorsed the sale.
Okay, that's all I want. Thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by voting. All those opposed. And it passes. C2.
Item C2, resolution authorizing easement acquisition by the North Carolina Department of Transportation relating to the US 421 Business 40 pavement reconstruction, bridge replacement, and interchange modification project, and pursuant to NCGS 168-274, located in the North Ward. Receipt of $56,300.
I had that one pulled. Again, I know we saw last week or whenever property owners on the local networks talking about the easement on 8th Street. So we know that they're okay with this, even though I'm seeing it here for the modifications to the easement. Isn't that what this is on 8th Street?
This is the parking lot that the police department uses on 8th Street,
Yeah.
diagonally across from the police department.
Right. So we didn't have to do anything to the owner on that corner that owns the auto place. He's good?
This is not involved. This is only involving city property.
Okay. All right. I'm good. Thank you. Move for approval.
so moved, madam.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by voting. Yes?
Chairman, could I ask a question? This work relates to the Business 40 closing, right?
Right.
Transportation patterns?
Yes, it is part of that. It's to increase mobility in other areas of the city so that when the Business 40 closing is
Right.
complete, it will,
Connect over to Cherry Marshall and what have you. Why are we so late seeing this? We got 2 months from there, that road closes. When is this work going to be undertaken?
Councilmember Larson, last year we brought to you, and it was authorized, acquisitions on this same lot. DOT, NCDOT came back just within the last couple of months and said that they needed some additional permanent utility easement on the property. So that was a supplement to what they had originally planned on. We were just notified of this within the last couple of months, and this was the earliest we could bring it.
So I know it's not really your wheelhouse maybe, but when do we expect that work in that area to commence?
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Is it already
Yeah.
underway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
cutting trees, preparing.
So they were, on that street,
Go,
the
Mike.
wide
But-
of that street?
But I have to say, Ken, I'm thinking, and come on up, that I remember us discussing this years ago when the 40 negotiations and talks were being done. And I also remember this coming through the Transportation Advisory Committee a month or 2, 3 months ago. And then it was, again, the same conversations when we realized, 2, 3 years ago, we were going to close down 40. 8th Street, the easements, the parking lot were part of that conversation. So I do know the last meeting last month of the TAC, this was one of the items that was discussed. So,
Good evening.
and you were at the meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. NCDOT is in charge of the project, and the work on 8th Street is currently underway. The additional easements that they're purchasing is related to that work so that it can be complete before November when 40 actually closes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We've had the motion on the floor. It's been passed. Thank you. C3.
Item C3, resolution authorizing the acquisition of a permanent bus shelter easement on property located on New Walkertown Road and Big House Gaines Boulevard by deed or condemnation, located in the East Ward.
Yes, Councilmember Larson.
Yeah, I'm just waiting in other people's wards here, and I apologize.
See.
But I am interested in bus stops, and I'm particularly interested in bus designs and bus stop locations. And maybe this should go in front of Public Works as well. But what I'm concerned about in this particular location is that this is a hilly corner, and I'm trying to figure out the $125 to purchase an easement or perhaps even condemn the property and then construct presumably a shelter there with maybe another $125 to as contingency seems like an odd amount, and I'm wondering what kind of conversations we've had with the owner of that property and how we determine, for example, to place a bus stop in that specific location as to, say, compared to across the street where there's some shaded trees and whatever else might there was a creek over there for one thing. I know that's a problem. But I'm curious also as we think about this whether we're allowing enough land for some shade to be put on these bus stops as we construct them and the design of the bus stops. But the actual acquisition of this particular site as a location, considering the topography, how that's going to work.
Thank you, Councilmember Larson. The location was actually selected based upon where the residents are coming up to that stop on the corner. The reason that we're purchasing the easement has to do with the fact of the embankment there and having to cut into the embankment and put a wall in. So we were initially requested to put in a bench, but we decided that we would build the pad large enough to put a shelter there. So in order to do that, we needed the additional easement to cut into the bank to put in a wall around it to protect it and put in a shelter in the future.
Right. This is probably not a matter for finance, but I would like some discussion perhaps in Public Works about the design of our bus stops, screening, sheltering of those, and shade conditions as we begin. It looks like we're putting in some new ones, and it looks like we're putting in exactly what we took out 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if there's not some design issues to be discussed as well as sort of the context and shading and the general appearance of these things as we go. I'm fine with putting it there if logistically it can be done, but I do have some problems with the general presentation of that site.
Councilmember Ward.
Thank you so much, at least for the next 3.5 months.
That's
That's
right.
the case. As the councilmember Ward, one, that's where folks catch the bus today. Today, that is where individuals get on the bus and catch the bus, so it makes sense to utilize the same location for the bus stop. There's one right up the street at another location. It's the newer style because we talked in the past about what they look like. It's a much more modern design than the old bus stops and a little bit more attractive than what we've had in the past. So I'm excited. I'm sure the folks who catch the bus there, because you have a lot of folks who catch the bus to bring their kids to Head Start, and so they have strollers and others who are there. And so being able to make that space as accommodating as possible for folks who have kids and families, I think is going to be very, very important. So I'm sure the folks are going to be excited to be able to get that, because you have tons of folks catching the bus, bringing their kids, crossing the street, and then going down to Sarah Austin Center. So
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I was going to mention the same thing, the council member. You have to pass by there to see how it is today. And you have these mothers with their children, in fact, been sitting on a stone, sitting there, and it is so sad that we as a city couldn't do any better than that. So I think this would enhance the area.
So will $125 buy enough land for us to build something respectable there?
I don't know.
That's, I mean, it just doesn't seem like much money to be buying the kind of square footage that we're going to need to put a assembly area there. I mean, I just don't feel that this is quite meshed correctly.
Councilmember Montgomery.
well, I
Last
think
comments.
it's the easement, so it's different. So
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Larson, this is 881 square feet, about 10 feet by 20 feet, which it was designed to be adequate for the bus shelter. The easement was appraised. The property owner was offered the appraised amount and, in fact, had agreed to the amount. But we've been advised by the city attorney's office that there may be some issues of being able to get clear title to it. So for that reason, we're bringing it to acquire either by deed or condemnation.
So the owner's not objecting to any of this?
He did not object to the sale, but
Yeah,
whether we can actually get it by sale is in question.
Okay.
Thank you. I need a motion for approval, please.
No, you go ahead.
Motion approved.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed? Thank you. It passes. C4.
Item C4, resolution authorizing the City of Winston-Salem to apply for a fiscal year 2018 U.S. Department of Labor Youth Bill grant in the amount of $1,100,000.
yep.
Councilmember Montgomery.
So in general, I'm extremely supportive. I'm glad we're going back after another youth bill grant. Two things in reference to the grant itself. In the past, we've asked about being able to adjust our application to fit the needs of our community, particularly if we're talking about how we continue to increase opportunities for individuals in our growth sectors, and that we don't just focus on construction trades. And the grant allows for, as it says specifically, in-demand trades. And so how do we tailor this in a way where we're looking at tech, we're looking at individuals who are able to do programming and coding? How will that be potentially engaged in this? And the second question is, if it does go in the direction of not associated with housing and construction, then I object to the use of this $275,000 from the Housing Finance Assistance Fund, because those dollars should be focused on housing projects and not on things that are not associated directly with housing.
Councilmember Montgomery, with the first point that you mentioned, there is that same option with this round of youth build applications to include additional sector training for those that may be of particular interest in the community. We've done that before. The plan at this point is to include additional industries as well beyond construction. To your second point about construction, I believe that not only do we intend to keep construction a part of the youth build program, that it is a required component of the youth build program.
Still, I would caution us on the use of the Housing Finance Assistance Funds for non-housing related matters. So if it's going to be focused on on housing and rehabilitation of housing in one port, what is the proportion that we're thinking that we'll use for other, and then what does that match look like being potentially prorated from housing finance assistance based upon what we're used on housing, and then from another fund based upon what we're going to use for technology and that stuff. And that I would at least like to know, if you said we're going to include something else, what are those actual things that we're going to include in the grant? Because that was the concern in the past, that we're training folks, construction, and right now in the city, you see a whole lot of construction happening. But when we see long-term opportunities for moving up and the social mobility, the construction trades are not going to be the thing that help individuals move up that ladder. So we want to make sure that we're using these funds in a way that will touch this demographic of individuals in those growth areas. And none of that is mentioned in this. It just says we're going to do it, but what is it that we're going to do?
I believe that it's, we will certainly take those words and put it towards the application that is put together. I think it is still to be determined exactly what that breakdown would be, but Youth Build does concentrate on addressing low-income housing and housing for the homeless. So regardless of what the other components look like, it will absolutely include construction training that includes work on housing for low-income residents and housing for the homeless as well.
I can see where the council member's coming from. He's saying if we're pulling the match money from housing finance and we're asking for $1.1 million, how much of this is going to be for the housing part of the project versus, again, the same thing we've been saying for the past decade or when we started discussing Youth Build. There's got to be other componentry to it besides just construction. We know there's a need in the community for, artisan-type labor, carpenters, electricians, plumbers. We got that. But what about the technology side, the welding side, high manufacturing side, that sort of thing? I mean, and my next question is, and you can get back with us on this before Monday. You can get the material to us. But my thing is, have we collaborated and accessed our federal advocate to assist us with the grant request? We just got the $115,000 from CHAMP, and Leslie Mazingo and her organization, who are our advocates, helped us get that. So are we looking? Have they reviewed it?
Have they reviewed it yet, Evan?
The application is still being developed.
Okay.
But at the point at which we've got a complete application, Leslie will be reviewing it.
Okay, and I'm sure some of the members of the council would like to see that, review that app before it's submitted, after Leslie has a chance to put her fingers on it, because she can help us with this by going out to find if there are other cities that are benchmarks that have kind of tweaked this where we can address the concerns of the council member. Okay?
If I
Go ahead,
just
Councilman.
one more comment, I'm sorry, is that just because we've had the same conversation before when we made the applications, but it seems like we're submitting the same application the same way without any changes. So if we bring it up every time and we don't do anything different, then it's just tell us to be quiet because we're not changing anything. So I would at least like to see it says other occupations. What are the other occupations that are allowed in the grant that we can at least begin to bridge out into what we're training folks to do? So.
Mr. Garrett.
Chairman Adams, we'll bring that information. Also, I'm hearing maybe a desire to change the resolution, and it could be as simple now as just changing the match to say that it'll be based on how the money is spent. It'll be prorated between the Housing Finance Assistance Fund and other city sources for non-housing training, something at that level.
Okay. What's your pleasure on that? We want to just move this to
Is it
council.
time sensitive?
Yeah, September 18th. Without a vote.
I'd like to see a proportionate breakdown, how much is going towards housing related.
So we'll just move this forward without any, okay?
We'll get it Monday.
C5.
Item C5, resolution awarding a contract for public art services to Keisha Berry and Jasmine Chang in the amount of $200,000.
I asked this, whose department is coming out of? I just wanted to make a comment on C5 about the public art services. We've been discussing this off and on now for a while in committee. And I just wanted to say I'm excited about the anticipation of the first review of whatever that we're going to get crafted by them. And I'm really, really excited about the community inclusion to make this happen. Delving into the histories of our urban communities, letting them decide what the art looks like in our communities versus us deciding what it looks like. And I'm glad that we landed on these two because I looked through the material and they were the only ones that were really about doing that versus doing what we tell them to do or any other city. But they are very big on letting communities decide what the public art looks like in their communities. So excited when this is going to get started. Meredith, kind of tell us the date of everything.
So we plan to get the contract awarded in the next 2 months, and then really set the schedule as far as community input to ensure that the entire city is encompassed with getting the information to create the art that will go throughout the community, as well as the structure that will then bring the community together downtown. So that's what they're looking for. As soon as we have that final schedule, I would be happy to provide that to you all, so you all are very aware of what's going on with the project.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm going to ask the city manager to go back, Ms. Martin, to research when we first started talking about public art. It is something that's been needed, and I do believe with the Arts Council, we're working hard to make sure our city can show this public art. It does well when we have our tourists coming into this city.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd just like to get that background so they can be aware of some of the history before.
Yes, ma'am. The commission, I believe, was started about 1.5 years ago. Some of the projects they have undertaken include the art that is currently in the Benton, the otter that's on the water tank down in the South Ward, as well as it's a city-county group, so they also helped with the statue that's in front of the new Central Public Library. Other current projects include the Hamlin portrait that will be unveiled at the end of September, as well as this project. And they are also working on their public art plan and trying to get some community input in that as far as the long-term public art plan for the city, not just the portrait project.
Thank you.
And last request, again, just make sure that we provide all the resources we can to ensure that the community is plugged into this.
Yes, ma'am.
Whether it's community meetings, whether it's contacting neighborhood associations, leaders, churches, whatever. Just make sure that we got everybody plugged in.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am. And the group also held a workshop for local artists
Okay.
to assist them in learning the process for public art and how they can be involved in future endeavors that the city may have.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Councilman Larson.
There you go. Hey. Does this largely drain the financial reserves of the commission? Financially, this is one of the largest projects they've undertaken. Is that?
It is when it's one of the projects that was originally established, and so
Right.
it's not necessarily draining. I believe they have still about $100,000 within their budget. The budget increased for this year's
Right.
allotment, and so
That was the
we're
question.
continuing to explore.
There's still money in the bank for more art.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Need a motion?
Move for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded. Would you please vote accordingly? All those in favor, please signify by voting yes. All those opposed? And it passes. C 11.
Item C11, resolution awarding construction contract for Happy Hill Phase 1 renovations located in the East Ward to Barr Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $3,891,741.50.
I asked for this Again, I just want the public to know that this is another phase of parks and recreation in the city, within the city, in a neighborhood that had always had the history of having a park and swimming pools and all of that, tennis courts, and now they're getting ready to do basically what we did with the quarry and Salem Lake. So if you could just kind of give us a timeline of when we expect this construction to start in the Happy Hill community.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
Assuming that the contract is approved, it usually takes us about 30 days to get the contracts in place, so construction will be starting this fall. We're expecting about a year-long construction time. It's going to create a very nice picnic pavilion up on the street with some natural auditorium area overlooking where the soccer fields are, a very nice spray ground, and the pool houses that go along with those spray grounds, and a playground also.
Thank you. Councilmember Montgomery.
Well, one, I am. This has been coming through for some time. There's been challenges in contracting and looking at contracts. I'm excited that we're moving forward at this point, but I will point out and also will reserve my full support of this contract until Monday night, based upon the information around the MWBE and WBE goals. Based upon the contract, there was a 16% MBE goal and 11% WBE goal, and the goals submitted by them were 5.8% for MBE and 9% for WBE, which means that they failed to meet the goal, but they did submit good faith efforts. I would like to have a better understanding from the MWBE committee on why we set the goal at 16% and 11% respectively, and that would mean that there was a thought that those goals could be reached on this contract. And so if we're accepting the good faith effort as it is, then we need to make sure that we don't set arbitrary goals out for the community to expect that we're going to reach that goal, and then we have a contract that doesn't meet it. It appears as if the council is not keeping its word on ensuring that we're reaching our MWBE goals. So that's something that in between this time that I'm going to need to have some more information before I'm comfortable saying yes to it, but I did want to pull that out because that was the reason on the first go-round that this particular contract for Happy Hill hadn't come forward, because failure to meet goals in the past, but we've been this contract still not meeting the goals.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, ma'am. I and committee and other members, Mayor, how do we really measure or either monitor good faith effort?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I'm happy to answer that question. So the good faith effort, of course, we have special legislation here in the city of Winston-Salem that allows for a significantly higher threshold that contractors must meet to say that they have met a good faith effort to achieve a goal set on the project. So the citizens, the MWBE Advisory Committee that is appointed by the Mayor and City Council is charged with reviewing the good faith efforts of contractors who do not meet goals for projects. Staff does a review, but ultimately the Citizens Advisory Committee has jurisdiction over determining whether a contractor has made a good faith.
And so many of these that we do not meet, we always say we will monitor or look at the good faith effort. And I think we have to really be a little more, I would say, forward and speak with these contractors, because the more you let them get by, the more they get by. That's all.
Councilmember Larson.
Yes. Is the shotgun house on Happy Hill included in this phase of work?
The site preparation for the shotgun houses is included in this work, and then it will be the responsibility of the group that's redeveloping those shotgun houses. We're setting aside some money to move those when they have a
to make the move and prepare the site. That is in this phase of work.
That is correct.
Thank you.
I need
Mayor
another
Pro Tem.
comment. I was looking at TB 13 and they were having a community appearance program. I didn't get to it. And they had Miss Maurice Pitts Johnson, who has worked so hard over there. And I think when we have citizens who participate, who keep us aware and make sure that we are aware of what's happening, that it is good for this community, not let that good history not be told and shared, because that is some very strong history, Happy Hill Garden area.
So what is the pleasure on this item, C11? Do we want to, can I get a motion? And if not, do we move it forward without any action because the council member is waiting on information?
I move we bring it forward with our recommendation subject to getting the information.
Okay,
I second that motion.
all right. Yeah, Councilmember Gunn.
Not on this
Discussion.
matter, but just for the public, there's always a lot of conversation in the Happy Hill area about the undeveloped property around Happy Hill, and that is a housing authority project. The city committed funds early on in that project, which has had to be reallocated because there were federal dollars in that process. And so the city has been in conversation with housing authority trying to push them to get back to work in reference to those properties. The city owns few lots over there, but it's not significant enough to get someone in to really develop those. So with this investment and with those properties over there, it makes a great opportunity for them to move forward with continuing that development in the neighborhood.
All right. C12,
I'm sorry. Sorry, you moved.
do we need a vote? Oh. Have I got a motion? Yeah?
We don't check.
All those in favor, please vote by saying yes of moving it forward. And it passes. C12.
Item C12, resolution awarding a purchase order for RTS bus rehabilitation to Complete Coach Works Incorporated in the amount of $1,909,383.82.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this forward just to sort of highlight what's another effort that's being done to facilitate getting in and out of downtown during the Business 40 closure. I also always am delighted to see that we are rehabbing our existing assets and the buses. We're not going out and buying new. We're making the most of what we have. Can I get somebody just to give us an idea, just to give the public a general overview of what this effort is?
Transportation.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
In an effort to mitigate our bus traffic during the Business 40 closure, NCDOT has awarded us over $9 million of mitigated funds for our transit services. A part of those services includes rehab of the buses so that we could expand services on 8 routes, but we can also have some park and ride locations on 8 additional routes. So in order to have buses available to provide those services, we have the $1.9 million for bus rehab of 16 buses. The bids did come in a little bit higher, and so we're going to prioritize the rehab work, but this is where the money comes from, so that our transit riders are able to continue their services to get to work, to do their shopping and other services provided through our transit.
Thank you very much. Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed? And the motion passes. We're getting there. We're getting there. 14. Item C14.
Item C14, resolution approving an amendment to the sewer system construction and operation agreement with the town of Walkertown.
Who pulled this?
That was me.
Councilmember Larson.
Who on staff can speak to this? This appears to be a contract that we had with another municipality and for the construction and installation of sewer system, and there was a fee structure that was established, and we're asking to modify that now, I believe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Madam Chair, Councilmember Larson.
Good evening.
I know a little bit about this, yes, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. So the amendment before you this evening is exactly as you said. It's an agreement that the City County Utility Commission, the city, and the town of Walkertown entered into for construction of their sewer system to provide service there. The funding of that system came from several different sources, essentially grant funded. The Utility Commission managed those grants, managed the construction, and all those other things. And part of that in order to collect enough revenue, the town to collect revenue to pay back those loans, grants, et cetera, there was basically an add-on to the rate that they were charged. So they were charged 2 times the inside city rate. 0.1 of the overage was kept by the utility commission as revenue, and 0.9 went to build a reserve account that the town maintained to pay back that money. So the town approached the utility commission and said, we have collected enough revenue, we've paid that debt off, and are you willing to consider moving them to the inside city rate of 1.0? The utility commission agreed. They passed a resolution. The town council passed a resolution, but this is a little bit unusual, and this agreement was also signed by the city council. The whole point of the formation of the utility commission in 1976 was to give the county commissioners and the city council a governing body that would handle these agreements. So this amendment is before you this evening because the city council was actually a signator on that original agreement.
So under this agreement, the citizens of Walkertown will pay the same rate that the citizens of Winston-Salem pay?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So we have no overhead fees, no additional charges, and no nothing. It's just they get all the benefits basically at the same fee structure that we're providing our citizens.
Yes, sir. And the reason for that is the cost of service that is performed every year during the rate setting process shows that the cost to serve a customer in Walkertown is identical to the cost to serve a citizen of the city of Winston-Salem. Essentially, it's the same across the county, and the utility commission's actively looking at rate simplification in line with the cost of service studies to make sure that we're fairly charging everyone.
So the reserves that have been pulled out, the 0.9 cents, is that money has already been expended by the town of Walkertown?
Yes, sir.
They have no reserves. And our utilities commission is happy giving up their surcharge of 0.1%?
I can't speak to the actual happiness of the commission, sir, but sorry. But the financial impact of the sewer revenue is just over $200,000 annually. But the expense of maintaining 14 different rate structures is far too confusing and cumbersome. It probably costs that much just to maintain that many rate structures.
Okay, that's an argument. All right, I think that answers it.
Okay. Any other comments? Could I get a motion, please, on the C-14? All those in favor, please vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
You're going to announce something?
And it passes unanimously. Last one, C-16.
Item C-16, consideration of items relating to the Federal Transit Administration Job Access Reverse Commute Section 5307 funds for fiscal year 2018 allocation.
I asked for this because this came through the Transportation and Advisory Committee meeting. There is a company that was denied funding for compliance issues. And where's Mr. Yeah, McCullough. Could you just kind of let the public know how this went and that the agency is still able to provide their services, but we're going to help them become compliant?
Yes,
the city is.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We had a call for projects for our pass-through funds that we received through the Federal Transit Administration for 5307, our JARC access and reverse commute funds. The agency did apply for funding. A part of the application included them providing a financial statement demonstrating how they are using past funds that they've received, but also how they intended to use these funds that they were requesting. They were unable to demonstrate to us clearly how they intended to spend those funds. So what we did as staff is we sat down with them. We kind of went through the process to gain an understanding of how they're keeping up with their financial statements, clearly understanding that there were some misunderstanding and maybe some further training that they needed to have in order to help us feel comfortable with awarding them additional funding. So what we decided was in the best interest of their agency and to make sure that we are complying with federal regulations was to not recommend awarding any funding to them this fiscal year, but to help them be better prepared to apply for additional funding in future years. There was a question about them being able to continue their services.
Right.
They currently do have other funding that they've received from prior years that they have not spent. These funds can be spent over a 3-year period, so they will have those funds available to spend through this fiscal year so that they can continue to provide the service that they've been providing.
And could you just tell people what JARC is and what is it that these resources provide in what sector of our community?
Yes, ma'am. JARC means Job Access Reverse Commute, and the funding is used to help individuals to get to job opportunities, to also connect to educational opportunities to help individuals advance in their job experience. And so the agencies that provide these services provide services above and beyond what our regular transit can provide. After hours, or maybe even through other areas in the MPO. Because this funding comes to our MPO, then it can be used to provide transportation outside of the Winston-Salem city limits, but within the Winston-Salem urban area, MPO area.
Any other questions, any comments? Can I please have a motion for consent item 16?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by voting yes. And it passes. Moving on to our general agenda, starting with item G1.
Item G1, consideration of items related to financial assistance to Mayfair Street Partners located in the Northwest Ward in the amount of $4,630,375.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Adams, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of the committee. This item was brought to you for information you may remember a couple of months ago. I believe it was May. We are back for action this month. Again, the request is from Mayfair Street Partners for assistance to help in their redevelopment project in the area of Mercial Plaza. The developers are currently constructing a couple of hotels and will be taking charge, should this item move forward, for the redevelopment of Mercial Plaza, the park. Again, the total assistance for being requested is just north of $4.6 million, and that comes from several sources. It comes from the $3 million of 2014 general obligation bonds that were designated specifically for the redevelopment of Mercial Plaza, an additional $930,375 from general economic development bonds that were set aside for site development and infrastructure development, again from the 2014 allocation. And staff is recommending the city provide the developers with $700,000 over a 7-year period from a portion of the net new taxes created by the development. Again, all of the city funding to assist this project would be reserved for public infrastructure. And the developer is here if any members of the committee have questions.
Councilmember McIntosh, Councilmember Ward.
No questions. I'm really happy to see this at the stage where it is, although it's, I think everybody would have liked to see it happen earlier. There were many other balls in motion, and it just took some time for other things to fall into place for this to happen. I'd like the developer to cover his ears when I say this, because he's going to help us pay for our public infrastructure through his work there, and so I greatly appreciate that. I think this is a win-win. I know there's been some question about this being a subsidy to this developer at the expense of maybe other developments in town. I don't think I don't view it that way. I don't think, after further review, many other people do, because we're spending money on public infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, public parks, and the overall impact is going to be significant, especially when combined with the Callidium project that's coming up. So to me, this is all good. Motion.
Mayor.
Just want to echo that. This is a $42 million investment in our city. Will generate over $200,000 a year in new property taxes, net new property taxes. As Councilmember McIntosh mentioned, the $930 from the bonds will be used for public restrooms, public walkways, and sewer systems in that general area. And then the $700,000 will come from the taxes from the organization itself, mostly for sidewalks. So, as was said, it's city's investment is in public infrastructure, basically, and I think this project is so complementary. Councilmember Burke certainly knows this, for our tourism and visitor industry here by having 2 new hotels coming online there. So it's a good, solid project.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I was going to ask who are the developers, so at least we can see who we.
Mr. Burgess.
You need to stand.
Stand up.
He's shot. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. When will this get started?
If I'm correct, I think Mr. Burgess said that they're going to start demolishing the bridge over 3rd Street on the 17th. Is that correct? Okay, so I'd like to be there for that.
And Madam, I just want to say that this is something that we would like to see happen to be a successful project. And also, if you don't get it started, there's some bad habits that's being developed in that area over there. So you got to get it started to break the bad habits, so folks will see it as something, like the mayor said, when tourism and people coming in, it's a place for enjoyment.
Thank you. Councilman Montgomery, then Councilman Larson.
East Ward is right on the other side of the street, and so we get to face this property and see it. One, I agree with much has been stated, and I think that when we look at this from a financial assistance standpoint, for the public, we need to make sure it's clear you separate the fact of what is actually going to assist the developer and what was already intended to be spent on development, so that because you can look on it and say, where the city's investing $4.6 million, giving this to a developer to go and do whatever. But the fact is that the city already planned to do this development, planned to build out this park in this area, and it's significantly less that is impacted if there wasn't a park and then this was going to be a part of this development. That number is dramatically reduced in terms of what would be done even in the public infrastructure place. So I think it's for the public good, we should make sure that that's clear. And then on the other side of that, on the bridge, I know the bridge is coming down, it's going to look different. I don't know why that bridge is so despised.
Have you walked across it?
I have walked across it. I said it leads back to another concrete jungle on the other side. But nevertheless, it'll come down, it'll be replaced with some more concrete and some other stuff there, but still it'll be a great amenity to the community and a great space for the community. And I say that to say that in the future, let's make sure that we welcome all of our community into that space. Everybody, if it's our living room, then it's everybody's living room, regardless of how and what we may think of different folks in the midst of that. So,
Councilman Larson.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this come along. We've waited a very long time for it. It's been, the mayor said it was complimentary. I would say it was very complex. The number of players involved in that space and the geographical aspects of the topography and everything have been really difficult to work out. I think the great thing that has happened is that we now have single point accountability for the development of the whole site, the interface between the hotel, the Callidium, and 4th Street development. All of that now is under one roof that we can hold accountable for, and I'm anxious to see it move forward. We had it it's part of the bond project passed back in 2014, and it's one of those great projects that everybody's been looking forward to. It will be common ground. It will be the central park, more or less, of Winston-Salem, I think, on 4th Street. So I think we have a great thing to look forward to, particularly as Callidium comes online.
Thank you.
well, may I?
Yes.
And the reason that I point that out, as much as I'm grateful for the investment that we have there with One Park Vista and others, at times some of the residents there believe that the park out front is their park. And it's not their park. It is the city's area, and it doesn't belong to the residents that live in that building, but it is everybody's park. And so we have to make sure that the community understands that.
And just building on it, this recognizes one of our colleagues, Councilman Marshall,
Yeah.
who served in
Yes.
the council for so many years. So the $3 million was set aside for Marshall Plaza, not for a private investor.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
And as this planning has gone along, Councilmember Marshall has been involved,
Yes,
and
thank
residents of Park Vista, it's been a real collaborative effort.
Yeah.
May I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
It is moved and properly seconded. All those in favor signify by voting yes. All those opposed, vote no. And it passes. Item G2.
Item G2, resolution approving economic development assistance to Cook Medical pursuant to NCGS 158-7.1, located in the North Ward. Public hearing for this item will be on August 20th, 2018.
Mr. Raleigh.
Good afternoon again, Chairman Adams. This item requests approval for economic development assistance to Cook Medical in the amount of $2.464 million. That amount represents 75% of the net new taxes that are expected to be generated from this project over a 10-year period. The company is seeking to enlarge its operation. They are also, in addition to the site at Whitaker Park, they are also exploring potentially expanding at a greenfield site in Stokes County. So we are in competition with a greenfield site just to the north of Winston-Salem. The company would be looking to invest $55 million in upfit for the Whitaker Park facility. And for those who may not be familiar with Cook Medical, they're a privately owned family business that was founded in Bloomington. They have a global workforce of approximately 12,000 employees, and they provide products to about 135 different countries. Their local workforce is approximately 650 employees. Approval of this item would assist in the retention of those employees in the community. And I do believe that Mr. Lee, Bob Lee is here from the chamber, and I think representatives from the company are here if there are any questions.
Mr. Lee, would you like to come up and share a couple of minutes of how we are now competing, not just outside of North Carolina for jobs here in Winston, we're competing county to county now.
Mr. Chairman and Mayor Pro Tem and members of the committee, Bob Leake, 1080 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem. We are indeed competing not only next door but around the world. And you see evidence even as recently as this morning in Greensboro with VF Corporation and their move to Colorado with their headquarters. Businesses are trying to stay competitive in a global marketplace. And Cook Medical came to us a number of months ago with a request to try to figure out how to stay in Winston-Salem and how to stay in Forsyth County. And after an absolutely exhaustive search of real estate throughout the whole county, including all wards of the city, they were poised to go to Stokes County to a greenfield site. And at a last-minute effort, we were able to get them to consider a much larger space than they need for their activities today, and that is the old manufacturing facility at Whitaker Park. It's about 850,000 square feet of space. Their initial need is only about 250, but as they considered that building and looked at the opportunity that's going on completely around them at Whitaker Park, they were willing to consider this location. As you will recall from the numbers I believe that have been presented, it's a $55 million net new investment into that property. They can currently have about 650 jobs. They're going to maintain those jobs. They've agreed to grow their workforce by at least 50 more, and we expect, I hope, that it will grow by significantly more than that over the course of the next few decades. They've been a long-term Winston-Salem corporate citizen from back in the early 80s, and I believe losing them to another county would be a real tragedy if we have the ability to keep them, and I do believe that we do. Scott Sewell, who's with the company, is with me today if there are any specific company questions. And
have them come up
for a second. And I'm happy to talk about any other details that you'd like.
Scott Sewell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Name, address, please.
Sure. Scott Sewell, 4900 Bethania Station Road, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Work for Cook Medical.
Thank you. Just kind of, in a minute or whatever, let everybody know how important this retention is to our city and our brand.
So we are very proud to want to stay in Winston-Salem. We've been here since 1984. We have 650 employees. Our company globally, we sell actually more of our product outside the United States, about 55%, than in the United States. We have, out of our global manufacturing, we have 75% of our global manufacturing occurs in the United States. So what we do is we help patients, and we think it's a wonderful company that's been here for a long time, and we're just thankful for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One, the company is not coming to us and say, if you don't do this, we're going to leave.
Right.
They really did not want to leave, period. And I can vouch for the fact that they've looked at sites all over the city, including part of the city yard that we were offering up there.
Yeah.
So they couldn't find a agreeable site. And there is a site north of here that they were looking at. It's a $55 million project. And the thing also we want to emphasize is the company itself is paying for this incentive. It's not coming from the city's budget. They pay us their annual payment. We'll give them back a portion for a period of time. And it's a great technology company. It fits in perfectly with the fabric of the city's economy as we're trying to rebuild it. So I thank Cook for your growth. And, of course, Mr. Sewell personally in his volunteer work here in the city heads up our police foundation and has done some great work there as well.
Thank you.
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor, may I add one thing? I'm sorry to interrupt. In addition to Cook and the quality tenant that they are for the city, think about what this means for Whitaker Park as we're trying to redevelop that project to have a flagship medical device company with the kind of history that Cook has. It makes it so much easier for us to promote the rest of that park to other companies that want to do business in us. So,
thank you.
My one big question is, are you going to turn the fountains back on?
Stay tuned.
And we talk about catalytic events and investing money to make bigger things happen. And to me, this is taking a piece of dirt that right now is producing very little, if any, money. And we are actually going to be making money on it while we are refunding some of your property taxes to you. And in my mind, this is a perfect kickoff to bring other manufacturers and spin-offs on board. And the fact that you're stepping up to more space than you need, to me, sends good signals about what the future holds. And I know it's not entirely possible to tell us what exactly is going to go on there, but that, I think, that bodes well. And again, to echo the mayor, you're not getting any money unless we get our money. And that, from a public standpoint, I think is extremely important. Helps you, helps us. I think we all win on this one. And Bob, thank you. I mean, you've been the tip of the spear on this one. I know a lot of people have been involved, but I think it was a fairly complex one, and I appreciate all the effort that went into it.
This has been a community effort for sure.
Yeah, including our vice chair.
No, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I was going to say to Mr. Sewell, we always are pleased when we have people volunteering because volunteerism makes a difference for a city. Mr. Leak said part of what I was going to say about that Whitaker Park. You're going to be bringing more life in that area. Long years ago, that was just a wonderful place to ride by. People were coming and going. And so we appreciate you. And as I said in one of the other meetings, when business people will join with us as partners to help us creating jobs and opportunities, it will make a difference in the long run for our city.
Thank you. Any other comments? May I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by voting yes. All those opposed, no. And the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item G3, resolution approving economic development assistance to National General Insurance Company pursuant to NCGS 158-7.1, located in the North Ward. Public hearing for this item is scheduled for August 20th, 2018.
Mr. Raleigh.
Chairman Adams. Good afternoon again. This item is a request for economic development assistance from National General Insurance Company. National General is currently operating at Madison Park, a facility off University Parkway. They are at capacity, and we are seeking to win the company's planned expansion. The company is looking to create 626 new jobs across a number of functional areas and at an average wage of just north of $55,500. The assistance that totals $335,563 over a 5-year period. The first 5 years represents 65% of the net new tax revenue that the project would generate, and that assistance would help to subsidize the company's capital outlay associated with their proposed expansion. And National General, it's some of the folks in the community may know it by its former name, GMAC Insurance, located downtown. The company is it's a property casualty insurance company that has operated here for a number of years and was founded in 1920. They have a local workforce of just north of 1,200 employees as well. Ms. Jill Atherton with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as representatives from the company, are here to answer any questions you have about the project.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jill Atherton, 411 West 4th Street. We were approached by National General about the possibility for an expansion in our community. And after visiting with them and learning more about what their potential looked like, we were certainly pleased to come forward with a request for a possible expansion for them. The jobs are jobs that are good for our community, and our representatives here can tell you a little bit more about specifically the jobs if you're interested in knowing more. But the possibility of more than 600 jobs in our community is certainly something that we would support wholeheartedly, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to speak with you.
Would the representatives like to speak, comment? Your name and address, please.
Good evening, Council. Nicole Pemberton, 5630 University Parkway, Winston-Salem. Well, we are excited to talk about the potential of expansion of National General Insurance. As you heard, we are looking to bring upward of 600 jobs back into the Winston-Salem area. We have a variety of opportunities, and we don't only employ those who have bachelor's degrees and higher. We start with high school, and that's really important for any community. So our average pay for our entry-level, say, customer service position is about $38,000. So we are excited about, again, the potential of growth and hope that you will consider supporting this opportunity.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, well, I'm excited. In fact, when you all moved, I think one time it was in the Northeast Ward, I cut the ribbon for you.
Yes.
It was on University.
It did.
And what was said by Mr. Leap a few minutes ago, the competition within counties and this city will check my record. I've not had any problems in voting for businesses to come. The problem I have is that making sure that the residents in Winston-Salem are given benefit to have some of the jobs. And as the councilwoman and others have said, not all people, as you just stated, may have a BS degree. A lot of them do a lot of, but, and talk. But we want to let you know that it's a pleasure for me to say that I support this.
Thank you.
Councilman McIntosh.
We're kind of looking at this as a growth of 626 jobs. We really should be looking at it as 1,871 jobs, because that's your current employment base plus the additional growth.
Yeah.
In the world of fintech, financial technology, I think where you locate is pretty fungible. You guys could be kind of anywhere. And I think we're developing a reputation that this will further, that we're a good place to do that kind of business. We've got 4 major data centers here. We've got a well-trained workforce in that area, and this, to me, is complementary to what we've done so far, and I'm happy about building on that. 65% back on your property taxes for 5 years, to me, is a very good deal. It's a very good deal for you guys. I think it's a very good deal for us, so I'm excited about this, and more growth in the North Ward. My neighbor.
Any other comments?
Just a great deal, council members. If you think about it, it works out to about $536 a job. That's not bad. And again, a great company that's been here for a long, long time, and we're glad to see their expansion. I spoke to the CEO this past week, and he's excited about the growth here. I think just delighted that you're here.
We're excited as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your support.
We can, Ms.
Did you
Council,
ma-
yeah,
did
Mayor
you-
Pro Tem Mash made a motion.
Okay, second.
Seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. And all those that oppose, vote no. And the item passes. Thank you very much. And again, as they say, welcome for growth in the city. Next item, please.
Item G4, consideration of a request for financial assistance from Front Street Capital in the amount of $522,725 located in the East Ward.
Chairman,
Raleigh, you own it today, don't you?
I guess so. Chairman Adams, this item is for informational purposes this month, but it details a request from Front Street Capital for financial assistance to assist with a two-phase redevelopment project located in the Innovation Corridor, and it's the redevelopment of the properties that are known as Building 23-1 and the adjacent Moores Building. I believe you do have some maps, an aerial that shows the intended site of the redevelopment and some elevations that show the vision for the project. But the development plans that are under consideration call for the construction of approximately 100,000 square feet of office and retail space that would represent a total capital investment of about $25 million. The plan calls for the addition of up to 65,000 square feet of new office and retail space to the existing 10,000 square foot concrete structure of Bailey South or Building 23-1. The Moores Building on the southwest corner of the block would serve as the foundation for more than 20,000 square feet of additional retail space. And the plan also involves a conversion of the existing train trestles into walkways connecting the campus buildings. The developer is in need of parking to serve this project. The parking that has been identified exists in the Fourth Church Chestnut parking deck, which is currently at capacity. The reason that it's at capacity is that the city is parking several, north of 100 or 130 city vehicles in that deck at the moment. And the developer has proposed that to free up the spaces required to serve their development, that the city vacate the deck and allow them to use the spaces that are currently being occupied by city vehicles. And so to assist with that project, staff is proposing that we structure a TIF deal which would provide the developer with $522,725 over a 7-year period to offset the construction cost of a new surface lot that would be constructed as replacement parking for city vehicles that are currently located in the Fourth Church Chestnut deck. And the location of that surface replacement parking is on a vacant piece of land currently just to the south of Business 40. It borders Salem Avenue, and it's kind of to the north is Business 40 in the Innovation Corridor. So that's an overview of the project. So essentially the TIF proceeds will be used by the developer, again, to offset the construction of replacement parking for city vehicles. The developer is present today to answer any questions that you have about the project.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and, council members, the developer? Yes. Your name and address, please.
Yes, Coleman Team, 206 West 4th Street.
Okay. I think we have some questions. Councilmember Bessie, did you have any comments, questions?
I would like more information on the location that's proposed for the surface lot. I'd like to see it on the map and be able to take a look at that, please.
The location of the development?
Oh, no, the location of the proposed surface lot.
Okay, so the location of the development, will be taking the existing 10,000 square foot building in between the smokestacks?
Yes, no, I'm sorry.
Where?
The question really is more to Mr. Raleigh.
Yeah, staff.
So out of the 180 spaces, 130 would be on the ground floor, 50 would be a hunting license.
I'm sorry, sir. My question
Yeah,
was inadvertently directed to
yeah.
you when it's really to Mr. Raleigh.
Right, his question is to
placement,
staff
Mark Coleman.
about where is it that the staff and the employees will be parking, Mr. Ross?
Certainly.
Is it an existing lot? Is it?
It is not an existing lot. It is vacant. If you, just to give you a reference, I had an aerial. I did not include it in the materials that you saw. But if you're familiar with Center for Design and Innovation,
yes.
It's an area just to the north of that. If you think of where Cemetery Street is, it's basically right across the road in that area. That's basically it's a vacant field right now across from the cemetery.
All right, I can take a look at that. Thank you.
The attempt was to get the city vehicles closer to their current parking deck than they are now.
Okay. Councilmember Montgomery.
Well, questions or comments, Chair?
Questions?
Okay.
Mayor.
Again, I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Team and Front Street Partners for an innovative use of this space. If you've looked at the renderings that are part of the package, it's an amazing piece there. It's a $25 million investment, and again, the city's investment would be paid for by the taxes from the company. 50% of the new property taxes being paid. So again, no money's coming out of the city budget to make this work. But I just congratulate you on really an innovative reuse of this old facility and adding to it there as well.
Councilmember Larson, then Councilmember Montgomery.
As I understand it, we own the parking lot. What is the capacity on that parking lot roughly?
The parking lot to be constructed?
No, the one that they want space in.
So the parking deck, the total capacity is approximately 1,500.
1,500 spaces, so they're taking a relatively small chunk of it. The space that's being created, the new parking space, which they're basically asking us to pay for the construction of that parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
And that parking lot is being built on land that belongs to the Wake Forest Innovation Corridor.
That's correct.
And we are going to rent that land.
Yes. So we are currently in discussions with Innovation Corridor as they would own the lot that's to be constructed, and we will be able to receive it for a modest amount. Basically, what's under discussion at the moment is essentially just covering any costs associated with the maintenance or any potential tax liability that would fall to Innovation Corridor for that piece of property.
So what I'm grappling with right now is, we're going to give up X number, 150 spaces in a parking lot. We're going to get 225 spaces, right, in a new lot. So we get more spaces. We're giving up something we already own and occupy, and it's not really costing us anything right now. Right? I mean, we're not renting our own parking lot.
Yeah.
Are we? I mean, the current parking lot's not costing the city anything to occupy or park our cars there.
I do believe there is an
Well, I mean, if we rented it,
the
but
parking
assuming we got to rent, we got to park our cars somewhere. So what we're getting ready to do then is we're getting ready to pay. We're getting ready to give up 150 parking spaces, 180 parking spaces. And in return, we're going to pay a certain amount of money to build a parking lot on land that we don't own, and we're going to rent that land. And so I understand we're gaining parking spaces. The crux of what I'm having problem with is renting the land. And if this is a long-term solution for the city, for our city parking, and we're going to invest this amount of money in it, I'd like to know exactly what those rentals are going to cost us on an annual basis.
Councilmember Larson, if I could kind of clarify for you. So the funds that would be used for the construction of the lot would basically come from the revenue generated by the project. So there's no net cost. That's correct, yes. So we'd be reimbursing the developer for the cost of the construction of the lot. So that's again, would be from TIF proceeds. So there's no cost, just like some.
Well, the long-term benefit to the city is going to be significant because this is going to be a wonderful new facility. I'm just trying to understand what our long-term obligation is as far as our parking requirements and whether this is a long-term solution for us or a temporary solution, and how much money we're putting into it. Do we expect to solve the problem before the payouts?
Certainly. We have anticipated that this is not a long-term solution. So our obligation to use of this space would be short-term in nature. We're under discussions about that, the particulars of that now. But it is a short-term solution. The long-term we're examining other options at the moment for long-term replacement parking.
But their occupancy of the 180 spaces is long-term commitment to fill those spaces. The developer will continue after 7 years.
That's correct.
To occupy that space, whether we're occupying the parking lot or not.
That's correct. It would be a long-term arrangement.
Mr. Garrett.
Councilman Larson, we're in active discussions with Forsyth County as they design the courthouse right here behind us. They're going to build 2 parking decks on either side of the existing parking deck. They own the land underneath that parking deck and the land on both sides. So we're in discussions right now with them about the potential of partnering with them on a couple levels of a new deck. So we would have long-term spaces both for city vehicles as well as for the public. So that's hopefully the long-term solution they're working on.
So we've already spent the money on paving a parking lot on land that we don't own. So when it comes time to build the new deck you're talking about, we're going to have to generate more money to solve that parking problem.
And I appreciate the vivid discussion because this is not being voted on. This is consideration. This is for information only.
Need some clarification.
So, and I understand Councilmember Larson's, but the staff has that. Mr. Raleigh does, and the secretary, and they're going to get back with us with more information. I got a lineup here of council people want to speak. Councilmember Montgomery, then the mayor, and then Councilmember McIntosh.
All right. A couple things. One, I agree with part of what Councilmember Larson is saying in terms of the long-term component, because it's the first time I heard that the lot wouldn't be long-term use. So before I thought that would have been a long-term solution. So there is some heartburn in the fact that we'll potentially spend $500,000 for a paved lot, and then we're going to change that differently. If we kept the parking lot, the parking decks that we used to own instead of selling, maybe we would have had another parking deck to move our city vehicles. And so, again, I ask those to remember my comments on selling our parking decks downtown. But in looking at this deal as it is, the face of this deal, there are concerns that I raised in reference to this that have nothing to do with the comments that have come up. But overall, what we're looking at is a $25 million economic development deal. My concerns that were raised had nothing to do with Front Street Capital and their proposed proposal, which I think will be a great benefit to this area and bring into this part of the community a continued growth. My challenge is that Innovation Quarter and Development in there made commitments to the community in terms of what they would do in and around minority and business-owned, minority and women-owned businesses and supporting indigent populations when it came to providing additional health care. And it was not until this item came back around that we saw any additional movement on that action. And to me, if we have commitments from populations and communities, we shouldn't have to wait to the next economic development deal for them to come through on their commitments. We shouldn't have to use another deal to get folks to come forward on the commitments that they made before. And I drew a very clear line in saying with staff that when this came forward, I didn't want to have any conversations until Innovation Quarter fulfilled their responsibilities and moved. And we got RFPs out and stories out in the paper about what they were going to do and how it was going to move. But it concerns me, Mr. City Manager, that when we have these kind of commitments, that this needs to live somewhere and the community see the long-term benefit and not someone make a public statement at a city council meeting and then 2 years later they don't see anything happening in that process. Again, this is not on Front Street. I think this project is going to be a good project for it, and even talking with them in terms of their commitments of making sure that their project is inclusive in the commitments to the community as a whole. On our side, I just simply ask that we bring back information on what the long-term parking solution is, and then also what I'd asked for was revenue generated from parking, because what we're not including in the economic development question is if these parking spaces are put into use as spaces for the commercial development, that's additional revenue that is then coming in because we're not currently renting those spaces. We use those as a city, and we don't rent the spaces. If the spaces are then rented, that's revenue that comes into the city from the spaces being rented, which is not anything that we have calculations on. So that also helps us to understand what are we bringing in, what are citizens benefiting from now taking something that's not in use and putting it in use. But it does concern me that we could potentially spend $500,000 on the front end, but then not be able to keep that parking lot long term and need to come up with an additional partnership. But the development, what they want to do, what they're going to bring to this area, how it's going to continue to activate the commitment from the developer on inclusive development is something that I think is good for the area. But again, outside where they are in the development there, particularly Innovation Quarter, we got to make sure that the commitments that folks say they're going to do, that they do and that they live up to, and that it doesn't take them 2 years in another project for them to come forward and do it.
Thank you. Councilmember McIntosh.
I'm going to echo a couple things here. I do have a little bit of heartburn about building on, developing somebody else's parking lot and then have to lease it back from them. Although it's really about the number. What's the lease going to cost us over that period of time on top of the development cost, and how is that represented in terms of our payback from the partnership? And I think that number is going to be digestible, but it's awkward the way it's presented here. And agree that there are some opportunity costs that we're not calculating here of the revenue from those parking spaces. 7-year payback for me works. And in terms of long-term, we're talking about a 5-year period. Think about what has changed in the world of downtown parking in the last 5 years. I'm okay committing to a 5-year deal and saying let's keep our eye on what's going forward and how we deal with our parking, because I think we're going to have other opportunities and other challenges in 5 years. And this will just blend into that hunt for new spaces. And as we develop and have more income coming in, we have more opportunities to build and do some other things. So I'm in favor of it.
Mayor.
Not to belabor the point too much, but just a couple of quick things. One, the Church Street deck was never built to house city vehicles.
Nope.
We did that as a convenience. It was built to generate and support development in that area, which it has done. And now we got the luxury of saying we need more spaces. So we're making that work. Second thing, the developer's going to pay for the lot. We're simply reimbursing them, so we're not coming out of pocket for that. And the fact that there will be a long-term solution that's for parking that will come along. But if we don't do that, the $25 million is not going to happen, so we won't be having the monies to build a lot in the first place. So it's paying for itself.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The attorney is in here now, and city manager. When Mr. Montgomery mentioned something about the commitment from the innovation people, I'm not speaking about yours. I want to speak about that. Did somebody stand here and committed something to us? How did they commit it without being something they were supposed to do?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I may have stepped out.
Well, you were talking about the commitment that the innovation people and city manager, when he stopped, we'll let him. Did someone come in here and make a commitment about this particular matter that Mr. Montgomery mentioned? How did they make a commitment? Did we just casually let them make a commitment? When people are in here doing business with us, how do we make sure they follow through with the business? That would be the concern. If I was sitting out there as a taxpayer looking at TV 13, I'd wonder why all of us here would allow someone to come here to make some type of commitment and then not follow through with it. How do we get them to do what they were supposed to be doing?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, as I recall, the commitment, I think there are a couple different issues, but the commitment related to the development in Innovation Quarter is in the contract. As far as the minority small business incubator space, that is in the contract. So we do have that a legal requirement with them to do that.
But the reason he's saying that is because I emphasize that they need to. Now, we appreciate Wake Forest, innovative people. They've done a good job. I just passed there not long ago, and I saw that big building on 5th and Patterson. And I've said to the city manager, I've said to the mayor, you need to toot your horns a little bit more. We need to say to the taxpayers, we've been so busy talking to developers and contractors that we've failed to keep you up on how we're spending your money. Those are their dollars. But anytime anybody comes down here, Mr. City Manager and Attorney Carmen, I believe that if they're going to say something, we need to document it and make sure that they follow through.
And that is certainly my goal. I missed the comment earlier, but if it relates to the NWBE and the enterprise, that is specifically included in the agreement, and Councilwoman Montgomery and I worked on that.
Okay. Any, Councilman Montgomery?
I have one other comment. It was, Attorney, it was about the timing, how long it took them to move that forward.
It took quite a while, yes, it did.
To actually come through on what they were going to do. But one additional thing, and this is something I'd ask staff about, within this project, there's something else that they're going to be working on, particularly the old railroad components will be turned into a pedestrian walkway.
Right.
And one of the things I asked about is that when we increase that pedestrian traffic, I'm concerned about folks walking on Chestnut where the railroad is, and they haven't asked us about assistance on that, but I think that serves a public good. And just looking at how we work to make sure that if we want to pull folks off of Chestnut where the railroad is, that may be something that we want to look at in terms of how do we support that traffic being funneled along that way rather than people walking along the railroad side, which could potentially be a safety hazard. And the denser we become, the more I am concerned about the traffic along Chestnut and walking in that area.
Any other comments? Any other requests or information needed from staff on this in order for it to be?
Yeah.
Councilmember Bessie.
It appears to me that the location of the lot or the alternative parking for the city fleet vehicles is not of the essence of this particular deal, but simply a way to pay for an additional storage site. It seems that if we didn't pay for this particular storage site and had an alternative solution for where to put the vehicles that didn't need that, that we'd be getting the revenue from the project and wouldn't be spending it. So on anything related to the project. So what I'd be interested in seeing staff report back on is alternative locations for the parking that would not be not involve us paying a leasing fee essentially for the use of the property.
Just the city manager.
Just to clarify, the vehicles that are parked in the Church Street deck aren't storage vehicles. They're city fleet vehicles, your white cars and trucks that employees, when they come in this building, report to work in the morning, inspectors, they have to go get their vehicles there. So we've tried to find a site that was walkable to move those vehicles to. So that's about actually from here over to the Innovation Corridor site off of Cemetery is a little bit further, but not too much farther than Church Street deck.
Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to take a moment and just sort of make it clear that I have not made up my mind on this economic development project or any other projects that we discussed. I want to be a little bit more clear and say that I am not on the Finance Committee, so I always like to come in and hear what is being said and judge each project on its own merits. And I guess there are two schools of thought. One school of thought is that incentives are good to create jobs, retain jobs, and promote economic and community development, or they're not. And I think the people around this table wholeheartedly agree that those are necessary, especially given what's going on in the Triad, the state, the region, and all over the country. So I guess my direct question is, I came to listen to what citizens and developers and the committee has to say about each individual project. Is there anybody who is signed up to speak in favor or opposed to these projects? Because I don't get to vote today, but I do get to vote on Monday. So I'm curious, is there anybody who has spoken? Because I think based on each deal, these projects pay for themselves, they make sense. Now, there are some questions about this last particular project, but for the most part, these seem to be fairly decent and somewhat friendly incentive deals. Now, if there's somebody who can present to me something otherwise for my vote on Monday, I'm happy to hear it, but those are things that I haven't heard this evening.
We have Mr. Ken Rashid has signed up, and his subject that he wants to talk about is finances towards the cleanliness of Martin Luther King. I don't know whether that would be this committee or community development or public works. I'm not too sure where that would fall. Appearance, beautification.
It is officially Public Works. You heard it.
Landscaping, Public Works, Mr. Rashid.
But since, in light of the hour, perhaps we should explore where we need to send those.
Yes. You mean item number G4?
No,
or
no,
this?
this.
Yes. Mr.
We have one more
Rashid,
item.
I know. Do we want to let Mr. Rashid at least come up? He's been here since the beginning.
And public safety has a fairly short agenda, so
Yeah.
if we started 10 or 15 minutes late, I think that'll be appropriate.
Councilman Montgomery, and then I'll get back to you, Councilmember Best.
I'm sorry, I don't know if, I'm not on the committee, but I don't know if I call a point of order. There is an item that's being considered already that's not at all associated with the request.
Close that out.
So I'm not on the committee, but I hear that, but there's a existing discussion on the table about a totally different item.
And you mean G4?
Correct.
What I'm hearing, Mr. Raleigh, you're asking us for directive. You're asking us, is it time sensitive? You need to.
Chairman Adams, this item was just for information, so I have taken note of the discussion, and I think we'll come back in September having answered these questions.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I was merely asking that we go ahead and hear G5 before we take
Okay.
extraneous other topic comments from the floor.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that based on my comments.
Okay. Madam Secretary, City Secretary. Next item. Yes, Councilmember
All
Lawson.
right, I believe for informational purposes, we have the Chamber of Commerce today. Could I hear from them?
On this.
Mark Owens on this matter of C4?
G4.
G4?
Come on up.
Regarding that, I think it'd be useful.
You got 10 seconds. Come on up.
Informational searching here might be useful because we can hit staff anytime. It's harder to get a hold of you.
Sure, Councilman and Chairwoman, thank you for having me. I just am here in support of this project.
Name and address.
Mark Owens, 411 West 4th Street.
And you are?
414-18 Autumn.
And you are?
President of the Winston-Salem Chamber
Thank
of Commerce. I was not planned to speak on this specifically, but I can tell you I've been involved in this project as others, Councilman Taylor, and our chamber perspective is that it can help create jobs and growth for all citizens of Winston-Salem. And I think that's very important. And knowing the developer of this project personally, that is something they're personally committed to and have been in conversations with many of you about. So we feel as a business community, the discussions that you're having have been great. Mr. Mayor, your leadership, as well as all the council, making sure that Winston-Salem continues to grow for all citizens. And we feel that these projects do that, and they're in an area of growth that is right in the central heart of our community. So that was a little longer than 10 seconds, man. I wanted to try to be brief, but we are most definitely in support of these projects.
Thank you. Next item.
Item G5, consideration of a request for financial assistance from the Peters Creek Community Initiative in the amount of $600,000 located in the Southwest Ward.
Chairman Adams, this is again an item that's for information this month. But the city has been approached by a collaborative, really, that's comprised of the Shalom Project, the North Carolina Housing Foundation, and the North Carolina Development Council. They've come together to redevelop the Budget M property that's located at the corner of Peters Creek and Academy Street. The collaborative has secured an option to purchase that property, which expires at the end of next month. Their plan is to redevelop the site into a mixed-use project with approximately 60 units, 4,000 square feet of community facility space, and some retail space as well on the ground floor. The acquisition cost that has been negotiated is approximately $1.2 million. The collaborative has approached the city requesting half of those funds needed to acquire the property for a total of $600,000. Staff, we have identified potential sources should council and committee be supportive of this project that could be pledged toward the acquisition. You can see those sources listed in your item. They're comprised of three things: 2014 Economic Development GEO bond funds in the amount of approximately $200,000, $100,000 in RUCA funding, and $300,000 in future housing development bond funds that may be approved should the 2018 bond referendum be approved by voters. The group has also approached the county for the remaining half of the funding needed to acquire the property. The county is exploring and has put on the table the option of jointly purchasing the property with the city. Their proposal at this point is to be the first lien holder on the property. And so, again, then we basically enter into an interlocal agreement for their half of the funding. I do believe that, well, of course, you have some images in your item that show you elevations and, of course, the site of the proposed development. We do have representatives from the Peters Creek Community Initiative, which, again, is the group that is moving this project forward here to answer any questions that you have about the project.
Mine is to
Mr. Raleigh.
Raleigh.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. When you say they want, the county wants the first lien on it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's our understanding. I will say that we are still in active conversation, and this item, frankly, is developing as the days go on. But that's my understanding of their position as it is today. Yes.
Is this to be voted on today?
No.
No, I'm just going to be listening.
Okay. Councilmember McIntosh.
This is in Councilmember Bessie's ward, and I appreciate him letting me kind of take the lead on this. I've been associated with PCCI for many years. Lou and I were there kind of back in the beginning of it, and there's been a tremendous amount of effort. Kelly Mitter's done a wonderful job. I don't want to call this half-baked, but this is kind of here on my request to bring it up. The timeline on this is very short, and everybody's been working really hard to put a financial structure together to make this happen by the end of September. We may not hit that and may have to push back for a post-bond election. And from a legality standpoint, I mean, there's lots of moving parts, but my intent was to get this out on the table and see what the level of support is and to try to do everything we can to make this deal happen. It is, I think, absolutely transformative for the corridor there. I think it will change people's opinion of Peters Creek Parkway. I think it's also great to have affordable housing built in a different part of the city than we usually think of where we need to build affordable housing. So it just works on many levels. I would like to hear Kelly Mitter speak a little bit about where we are in the project and sort of some of the numerics involved.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Kelly Mitter. I'm the chair of the Peters Creek Community Initiative. I live at 428 South Sunset Drive. Most of you I've spoken personally with about this project over time. We've been working at this project for about 2 years. We've had the property under contract now since about September of last year. We're coming up on a year. And so we really are, I think, in a lot of ways at the 11th hour with this. We've been working very hard on our own to raise funds to do this alongside the two components that Mr. Raleigh mentioned. We also have a private foundation who's funding another $200,000. We've been in the process of trying to raise 1.5 so that we also, in addition to acquiring the property, we have funds to do things like demolish the budget in, which is something we'd like to see happen as quickly as possible upon the acquisition and securing of the property. So this is one of those projects where everybody we've spoken with, whether at the city level, at staff level, at the neighborhood level, everybody is really supportive of seeing this project transform. As you know, the adjacent property is currently being redeveloped into a new Mazda dealership by the Bob King Group. So if both of these projects come through, there'll be about a $25 million investment in that intersection when all is said and done between those two projects. We view this as a cornerstone along the parkway in our sphere of influence, PCCI's sphere of influence, to really promote private investment along the parkway. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mayor Jones, did you have?
No, I just thank you all for your perseverance. I know it's been a long time.
It's been a long haul, yeah, exactly.
It's a great project, and I'm not getting Councilmember Bessie's business there, but I'm sure he'd be glad to see it as well.
Councilman Montgomery.
I have a comment, but I'll defer.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that technically it's in the Southwest Ward, but it is across the street from the South Ward, and it is across the 421 Business 40 from the Northwest Ward. I don't use this word lightly, but this is genuinely a potentially transformative project for the whole area. This is an identified, it's in the identified West Salem RUCA. It would provide an opportunity for additional workforce affordable housing in a part of the city that is going begging for that now and is almost uniquely well placed for that in terms of proximity to job opportunities, shopping opportunities, and it would in fact change the nature of the Peters Creek corridor. The property that would be replacing has been a community eyesore for years and has not been providing the services that this project would provide on either a business opportunity or a affordable housing basis. This project would do that. Councilmember McIntosh has taken the lead on the financing from our perspective because this isn't one of his areas of expertise. But I am happy to endorse the need and the potential for the project in the strongest possible terms.
Councilman Montgomery.
Well, overall, I say ditto to the comments that have been made. When we look at this area, the ability to come and bring in quality affordable housing. I use that word quality affordable housing because although that property has been an eyesore and many individuals have used that property for things that they probably shouldn't use that property for, to some, those type of properties present the most affordable housing that some people are able to access in terrible condition.
Right.
And so the only thing I ask in this process, because it's still going on, I support us working to try to figure out how you get control, because if you don't get control, you can't do the development long term, right. Is making sure that there's some type of services that are attempted to be reached out to people who use the property for housing right now. And although there's a commitment for the affordability in the property, how do you make sure that people who are being served in inadequate housing today has an opportunity to be connected to services long term?
My comment back to your comments, Councilmember Montgomery, the Shalom project, I mean, the folks at Shalom, those are the clients that they serve. And unfortunately, we don't have any of the Shalom folks with us tonight, but they would say to you that is their biggest concern as well, and that's one of the things they're really kind of put a lot of emphasis in terms of working with the folks who are residents there. With my Habitat for Humanity hat on, I know this well because we, a couple of years back, had a Habitat homeowner who lived for 2 years in the Budget Inn with her 2 children, so I'm well aware of how that serves some people's needs.
Councilmember Larson, then Councilmember Bessie.
What is your timetable on this? We went through a rezoning argument recently, right. And as I understand it, you had an option that was time sensitive in regard even to the rezoning component.
Right. So, that was an addition that
right.
So through that rezoning where we put a revision clause on the rezoning, also September 30th. So
September 30th.
Right.
So what I'm trying to understand is, I mean, we can talk about this some more, but you have to raise 1.2 million. Mm-hmm. You're asking 600,000 from us. We seem to be able to scrape that together. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel, it looks like, picking up nickels and dimes anywhere we can on this project. But I think based on, I can see this project from my ward, let me put it that way, and we don't like it. We don't like the way it looks right now. Budget End is a nightmare. It needs to be addressed. I'm concerned that we lose an opportunity while we delay these decisions to be made. And I'm asking, I guess, city manager or appropriate people as to when this would actually come before us, realizing that we're only covering half your bill anyway. Right. And if we would put contingencies on whatever, you being able to raise the additional amount, give you some assurance to go forward with the opportunity of maybe, in fact, closing on this project by the end of next month. Right. And time's running out quickly. But I think if we act quickly, that we can provide some assurance to your other investors that the city is, in fact, behind this project, which I think is an important statement. And I'd like to know, as far as the city manager goes, or the various people involved, how quickly are we able to move forward on this?
Councilman Larson, if you take note of the funding sources that we have proposed to use for the project, you'll notice that about half of that 600,000 represents future funding, not current funding. And I think, you know, the conversations that we have had with the requesters, we don't have the current sources needed to close at the end of the month. However, I think what the position of the proposed developers is that if we can show a commitment potentially for future funding that would be needed to close at some date later on, that may be enough to entice the seller to continue conversations with them.
We have 300,000 that we could commit, and the other 300,000 we have to wait until after the next bond. So we're already selling stuff before we got it. Yeah, I love that.
Well, the reality is that if the city can provide 300,000 and the county comes through with the 400 that they're talking about and the 200 that we have from a private funder, we're really close.
Is it 400 now? They told me 600 the other day.
Well, they've actually gone to 600 under this potential joint ownership piece, but it was 400 was our original request.
The challenge with the county is, in our conversations, is they're very adamant that, well, first of all, the county typically does not do housing at all. So this is kind of historic, in the city. It's kind of historic that they're discussing it at all, but they've indicated to me that to get support, it would have to be the city purchasing the property, and then they do an interlocal agreement with the city for $600,000 for their money, and they take a first place lien on the property, so they'd have the asset at least, and then they could discuss later if they might reduce that amount at the time a developer comes in. But if we're going to purchase the property, the city's got to go through due diligence, which will take some time as well.
In light of the good point that Councilmember Montgomery raised, I would just think it would be worth getting as close as we can manage to a census of actually the users of the budget-in property who are in fact treating it as their permanent residents, who we would be looking to assist in relocating, so that we know actually what that number is and can deal with it.
This effort is, I think, to put PCCI and Shalom in a position to go back to the seller and say, okay, we're for real. We've got commitments for this much money. It opens up a lot of doors when you say, I got most of the money, and it's city and county money, and it's real. It allows you to ask them to hold a second. I mean, there's just other things that open up as far as possibilities. So getting us to this point, I think, is really positive, and just gives you leverage to go back and talk to them with.
We don't know what happens with the revision clause at this point. But.
Well, at some point, I would think that if the money's real, they'd be willing to let that go away. Yeah, that could get hairy, but we can figure that out.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah. But I view that as one of the sort of least problematic.
Any more comments or directives to staff? This item is under consideration. It's not to be voted on.
I think it's really important that staff push forward on this as hard as we can, and that we can make whatever commitments that we can reasonably to assure the buyer and the seller that the city is vested in this project, and assure the county as well that we think it's important enough. Now, I don't know what form that takes. I don't know whether it's revisions of our grant, whether we commit the full amount, or whether we commit part of the amount, and with the commitment that this other funding has to be raised before we will execute on our money. But it seems to me somebody's got to take a first step here to actually show some commitment. And I don't know when it comes to council that we actually say officially that this city, the council, is willing to commit resources to this project, either in a phased stage, or in a conditional stage, or however we do it. But as you have your discussions, you talk to the owner, somebody's got to move first on this, and I would like it to come back to at least council at some point with a harder proposal as to what's going to actually happen here.
That comments, we're going to close. Councilmember McIntosh.
So this is the process of getting staff a little support to go back and to just
Correct.
to move further to get to the point where we can begin to start to commence the
Discussion.
Right. As of hearing this group say we support it, it puts them in a different position to go back and discuss.
And what I'm hearing is that basically we're just giving staff the directive to go and discuss, negotiate, get with the county, do whatever they need to do to try to make this initiative happen.
Thank you.
That's all. Any other comments, Councilman Montgomery?
This is just one comment, and the other item will go to Councilmember Bessie's committee for conversation. But I would ask the city manager to speak very briefly in and around, and Martin Luther King has an imminent beautification project as part of the state that is coming forward, just so folks at least know. I'm not sure what the exact issue is there, but so that they know.
Mr. Rashid?
No,
we're going
Mr.
We're going to let Mr. Garrity speak.
Councilman, let me ask Mr. DeCane to quickly go over where we are with Martin Luther King. They met this morning as well on that, so we're trying to move as quickly as possible on that.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Montgomery, members of the committee, Mayor Pro Tem. So the plans have been drawn up. There's a procurement in place for an artist. We're basically waiting on clarification from the state to determine what legitimately can be paid for with the state funds that is considered related to the transportation aspect of the beautification, and then what is not. What the state did was came back and cautioned staff that there was a similar project in another community where they had put in they had included a clock tower in it, and then the state came back and said, well, we're not going to be willing to accept that clock tower as part of the funding that comes from transportation and the federal funds. So I don't want to say we're in a holding pattern on that, but until we get true clarification on that, and then we can bring on the artist and whether or not that person can be funded through those, doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. We'll be able to move forward with a better scope of work and something that can be reasonably accomplished, also considering the confines of the right-of-way, so where fences are placed and those sorts of things. That's essentially where we're at today.
Councilmember Bessie.
Yeah, I was to say, Public Works has a relatively light general agenda tomorrow, and we can certainly add a brief discussion on that item.
I don't know, again, can I just ask for a point here to bring up Mr. Rashid to let him be clear on what it is that he's asking, because we're kind of taking this in 2 or 3 directions. And Mr. Rashid.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Rashid is in the Southeast Ward. I represent him. He is. And I'm going to speak for him now. He came to speak, and I know we've got public safety. We're going to be respectful to those who are out here wanting to do public safety. I think we can get started around 6:30, but I want to hear from the man.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Mr. Rashid, please come up. I went to school with him. We used to hang out.
My name is Ken Rashid. I live at 1338 Argonne Boulevard. I'm a product of the Winston-Salem Society County School, and I am a Ram.
That's right. Play basketball.
Now, I normally come here in support of someone else, but I figured since I'm going to be here tonight, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. And as I've been sitting, I've been thinking that the average person that would come in this room would not understand what's going on. I don't normally come because I can get the information on the internet, but I'm concerned more about the disfranchised. There was a lot of talk about everything that's going on in the city, where our tax dollars are going, but would the average person understand it? Probably not. Now, I want you to understand where Argonne Boulevard is. It's right adjacent to the Armory, in front of the Bowman Gray Stadium. If I were to leave my house and turn left on Argonne, I'll be coming up to Martin Luther King. Make a right on Martin Luther King, so ride with me for a second. I just passed the water treatment place, Reynolds Park Boulevard, Winston-Salem State. Eventually, I get up to Fifth Street, and I think there was just some talk about some things that work for Fifth Street. But I think if we're talking about financial assistance, one of the things that I thought about was the shopping area on Martin Luther King. Do the owners of that facility have any options of getting financial assistance to clean the place up? Basically, the place looks pathetic. It's dirty, and something should be done about it. The Burger King on Martin Luther King, there's no way in the world that would have been allowed to stay in Buena Vista. But for some reason, it stays in our community. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in our community. I know I can call Mr. Taylor anytime and ask him about things that I'm concerned about. But since I'm here, those were the things that I'm most concerned about. Now, if I turn right when I'm coming out of my driveway on Oregon and go up to Wartown, there's a facility up there, and I forgot to mention there's a auto repair shop right there on the corner of 5th and Martin Luther King. It's pathetic that place is there in our community. It would not happen in any other community.
Used to be Vico.
If you come, if I'm coming up from Wartown, there's another place up there. It's at least 2 automobile dealerships or repair places, which are pathetic. And it's a shame that I have to leave my home and those blights are in our community. It would never happen in Buena Vista, on the other side of town. So since I'm here, I thought I would bring that up. I don't know if there are any financial incentives for those people, if they've applied for any financial assistance to get those places cleaned up, but they really need to be cleaned up. Even the roads on 5th Street are absolutely pathetic, and we deserve better in our community. So I thought I would bring all that up since I'm here, and I've been here so long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just say,
Mayor Pro Tem.
I know the city manager was hearing a review, because I have said this the other day, I mentioned 5th and where that Burger King is located, I said it wouldn't be in other place. And I said to the city manager on an occasion, we wonder why people who are black like me don't live in the area where I live. Mr. Larson rode with me and he talked about the beautiful homes that we have east of 52. And there are some beautiful homes. They've made big investments, and back when some of them made those investments, it was hard for blacks to get the interest. And the banks charged us more than what they should have charged us because we were black. And then when you have to leave your job, I said to the city manager, you worked all day and you want to go home. You want to be able to see places that are convenient, that's clean. You can stop in the grocery store, the drugstore, anywhere. Now, the people that I want to come to be mentors for black youth east of 52, when they leave their jobs, it becomes so depressing that they have to look at that, what they have to look at. And then they go to their lovely homes where we keep our yards nice, we make big investments, but we have to pass through so much. And I can understand clearly what you are saying. And it's not anything new to the ears of these people down here. They have put money. We have inspectors who come into the area. We have something on the book that they can become chronic people, and we can just go out there and do certain things. I said to him the other day that Mr. Montgomery had done a very good job with the Community Development Housing Committee. He has taken it and moving it to another level. But in all that he's doing, you have layers of people that's hired down here. You've got CALs. I said that to him this morning. You have CALs, you have inspectors, and you have us who are individual elected officials going back and forth through east of 52 in the area that we live in, and it seems like things are still not moving like they should be moving. So you are exactly right, and as a taxpayer, you have every right to expect more than what we're getting. Thank you.
Any other comments? I just want you to know, Mr. Rashid, I have talked about the auto repair businesses in our communities for 10 years since I've been on this council. You look, all of us have areas in our community. It's not that we're against small business, and that's, you know, how people get caught up in that. They think we're trying to close somebody's business down. We're not doing that. We're just asking that the business attempt or try to put an appearance face on it so they can be proud of promoting their businesses as well as the people that live in the community. On Indiana Avenue, on my side, in my ward, it has become no different than Watttown and whatever else that we see. And as recently as last week, we had someone that wanted to have some property rezoned on Indiana to put another auto repair shop beside another auto repair shop. And I told them, you're talking to the wrong person. But again, this is America. We can't stop them. There's 8 people on this council, but I feel you. I think we need to put some more teeth, as I've said before, on these types of businesses that not only are sightly in our communities, they create ecological type hazards to our health. Whereas we can't do anything with our land in the communities if we want to build something there because of the brownfields. So, Mr. City Manager, expectation is, I think we need to come up with a new plan of how we ensure, again, the appearance of our communities in the urban core. Mr. Councilmember Taylor.
Very briefly, Mr. Rashid, I'll be working with you specifically to address the properties on Walton Street. We get a call from this week.
Mr. Montgomery, Councilman Montgomery.
Well, as this council knows, and we'll see fully presented this month, the final presentation of the East End Master Plan, which has engaged the neighborhood and the community. It really speaks to every single property that you talked about on Martin Luther King. It speaks to all of that. Within the next 12 months, what we discussed about the improvements on Martin Luther King will happen, and that starts from Business 40 all the way down to 52. That space between MLK will see a corridor transformation that will happen along that corridor, and those funds are already allocated, ready to go, and that's what Damon mentioned earlier in terms of where we're kind of holding in that pattern. And so that area will transform on visually what that looks like and how that feels to drive, along with the project that is being worked on and being led by SGAC and CDC that takes in all those properties. The owner of that property is out of Minneapolis, the shopping center. He's some guy who gets a rent check and really doesn't do a whole lot there in reference to it. The RUCA areas and RUCA dollars that we have are something that have been offered there and just have not taken advantage of. And so we're looking at alternate ways to make sure that we can get control back into this community to make sure that people here care about what they see.
Councilman Bessie, did you have?
Councilmember Montgomery made the point I was going to raise, that there was money in the bond allocation to address improvements in the East End area specifically, and that we're all working to see that be one of the next areas to take off.
And there's also money been allotted by the Department of Transportation for Martin Luther King. If some of y'all remember, we lobbied to get more money for that because they didn't have enough money in it to beautify and bring Martin Luther King up to standard. And that's the Transportation Committee as well as Public Works. So again, as we move forward to 40, the closing, you're going to start just like 8th Street we talked about today. Martin Luther King has got significant bank money sitting over here waiting for it to start. And then that money rolls over into the beautification of the streets and sidewalks and lights and grass and landscape. We even had more money put in the landscaping piece. I told them we need more than grass. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm looking forward to Councilmember Taylor working with you, Mr. Rashid, and bringing us the report back. Mayor Pro Tem.
And we thank you for coming down, making a presentation as a citizen and a taxpayer.
Thank you. Councilmember Larson.
I believe $300,000 is Creative Quarters, which is all private money being put into the Martin Luther King corridor, is it not? This is not government money. This is citizens' money.
In addition.
In addition to
that's
2
point. Part of the match.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Which is a statement of the commitment, I think, by the citizens at large.
All minds are sound. Any other business of the day? Councilmember Taylor.
Public safety will begin in 5 minutes at 6:40.
Meeting is adjourned.